Welcome to the WP-Tonic This Week in WordPress and Tech. Now, this is number 638 of the WP-Tonic podcast, and we are going to be talking about WP-Deploy. We're going to be talking about WordFence. We're going to be talking about Inside Blue Origin if we get a chance. But for the next 30 seconds or so, you're going to be listening to our sponsor, which is Castos, and a couple of others. See you in a minute. 1, 2, 3, and we're back. So I'd like to introduce you to myself. I'm Andrew. I'm co-host this week. So if anybody gets a little bit stroppy, I've got hold of the mute button, which we all know that this can get a little bit hairy sometimes, this particular podcast. So I needed to take some control from somebody. But I'd like to introduce you first of all to our special guest, Matt Medeiros, who is a podcast professional, unlike us. But there you go. So have a go, Matt. Introduce yourself and tell people where they can.
You can just use that term loosely, professional. But Matt Medeiros, you can find me at craftedbymatt.com and my day job at Castos.com.
This is where guests come to end their careers.
Yes.
You know that.
Yes.
All right.
Right. Any more interruptions like that? Spencer Foreman, tell us where you're from and how people can get in contact with you.
Yes. Hi, it's Spencer Foreman from WP Launchify. By the way, I really do enjoy the BBC, the soothing pipes of the BBC. I feel like I'm back overseas again. BBC 4.
Which rhymes with sketch. Tell us where you're from and how people can get in touch with you.
Certainly. Good morning. My name is Sally Getch, the WP fangirl. I'm in Oakley, California. And you can find me at WPFangirl.com and at Sally Getch. Also, Heather is waiting to join us.
Oh, right.
Well, Heather, I'm going to add Heather to the stream. That's great. Hi, Heather. So as you're here, introduce yourself, unmute yourself, and tell us how people can get in touch with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. I am Heather Renzi. I am the digital solutions lead at The Difference, and you can find me at heathriel.com.
Brilliant. And finally, my co-host and the starter of this show, Jonathan Denwood. Please keep it brief.
The founder. The founder. Yeah, I'm the leopard of WordPress, the scourge of many in the WordPress community, but I love my role. So, and you find me at WP-Tonic, where we build membership and learning management systems for e-learning entrepreneurs. Back over to you, Andrew.
Brilliant. Thanks. Right. The next one is, let's have a look at this little article that WordFence continually seem to be writing about plugins and plugin vulnerabilities. And I quite like Heather's opinion, first of all, on this one. What do you think about WordFence doing this kind of thing and making plugins kind of look more vulnerable than they are?
So this happens a lot. Like every time, like I have a responsible disclosure policy on every single one of my companies and sites that I ever put up. And every time I do it, like unless you make it very specific, like people will come in and say, oh, you have like a cross-site scripting error or something. So like it appears that there's a lot more vulnerabilities than there actually are, or actually it seems like there's a lot more. It's worse. It seems more bad than it actually is. So for this, like if you actually like dive into it, the problems that they're seeing, like, I mean, this is cross-site scripting error. And what that means is when you install it on one site, like then they want the ability to run it on others. And this can be bad, or it can be something that is allowed, like for you to have. So it's all about what they're trying to do with it. Like anytime you see something that if you want to run a site in an iframe, for example,
Sure.
you need to allow cross-site scripting. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So it'll come up as an error. It'll come up as a security risk. It'll come up as all these things. So almost every single plugin is going to have a cross-site scripting error, and it sees. So yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as it seems.
Sure. Okay. Spencer, as a plugin developer, what do you reckon to WordFence announcing these particular errors and oh my god, don't get your site hacked kind of issues that they put out?
My mainstream answer and my geeky answer. My mainstream answer is, first of all, I actually really appreciate the service because I subscribe to this. And there have been several instances in the last 12 months of major plugins, including WooCommerce, having severely important things to pay attention to. So I, in the years past, have been a fan of Sakuri and what they do, but like WordFence is my go-to plugin now for everybody. And the newsletter is very useful. In fact, I would put it in the category of you really need to have this if you have anything WordPress. On the geek level, what I found interesting here, and also I'm not poking necessarily at Brizy, but I bought the Brizy lifetime deal when it first came out, and it was a couple of years ago. I haven't used it but once because they've had a unfortunate comedy of errors implementing what they promised. The Brizy Cloud gets rejected as sales pages from Facebook. The builder has a million problems. But as a developer, I look here and I go, oh my God, why are they using the isAdmin function instead of the capabilities function? Because they apparently saw the problem, fixed it in version 1.26, and then did everybody the favor of reintroducing the same bug into the next update, which leads me to believe somebody is literally sleeping at the wheel of the truck or something, because it's really hard to do that. Like, you really have to think about.
Well, sometimes plugin developers they kind of do the wrong iteration and then go, oh, okay, you know.
Can I jump in here?
No, I'm going to invite you in next.
No,
I'm going to invite you in next.
For all, so I'm going to
invite you in next. So shush.
Mute that guest. Here's what I want to say something though about Brizy, and then I'm out. The thing about Brizy is this problem of being on the hook is the Spider-Man problem, right? Great power, great responsibility. When we talk about the difference between the native Gutenberg editor, which, thank you, Sally Getch, rhymes with catch, got me turned on to, and finally, like, at least who's on the hook is the WordPress core. When you put no, I'm not going to go faster for you because you're not hosting. When you put in another layer, you add the responsibility of being like the WordPress core of, you can't put super bugs in here. You can't put super vulnerabilities.
Sure, I get that. Right, Jonathan, your view is slightly different.
I totally disagree with Spencer here. This company keeps doing these hit pieces on other plugins. Brizy, I don't know about them as a page builder. I know that they're lovely people. I've spoken to the founders. They're really nice people. They don't deserve this rubbish from WordFence. This hit piece.
What's the rubbish?
Well, the reason why it's a hit piece is
factual. There's no personal attacks here. They're not saying that the guys are idiots. They're saying there's bugs.
They had a security problem. WordFence approached them. They dealt with it in a professional way. It's a non-story. I don't normally I don't even publish these stories normally, but I did it for this discussion. And this particular company, and I'll be interested to see what Matt says about it. This company keeps doing it. And it's damaging WordPress as well in general. And they keep doing these.
I agree with Spencer. It is factual. It's just like if people don't understand what they're seeing. Like for example, like what I'm saying is like they need to explain to people the difference between like a bad thing, like a really bad thing, and a not so bad thing. And because it's so,
but they don't see that, Heather. They just see the title. That's what they see.
It's so much noise.
I think
people are ignoring it.
Right, I'm going
to
stop you interrupting now, all you people, because I really want Matt's view on this one, and I'm going to move on. Sally, you'll get your say in a minute. Matt, okay. You've dealt with this kind of stuff in the WordPress community. You've seen bugs, you've seen whatever. Is WordFence doing the right thing by issuing these kind of statements out there on these plugins that have got vulnerabilities? Are they doing it the right way, do you reckon?
I mean, you just have to bounce, it's gray area, basically. It's the headline, right? I look through the piece. It's what would be bad is if they immediately posted it when they found it and said, we've got a problem, you know, and just disclose it to everyone immediately for every, like, you know, kid with a Linux pen test tool. Because that's the only thing I could think of in securities, though, because that's what I used to do when I was like 16. You know, but it's just the headline. The headline is the thing I have issue with. But at the same time, it's a factual headline. It would be great if they said bug found back in 2020 that has been patched since. You know, here we are a year later, or almost a year later. So it's just like, they're a security company. This is what they do. I mean, who the hell else? I mean, you're going to read a blog about security every week. It's pretty dry material. So like, this stuff is what wins, you know, the clicks. You know, that's the only thing I take issue with is maybe just the way the headline is penned.
You've got the last word on this very quickly, because I want to move on to something else in a second. But
yes.
What's your view on how they do this?
Well, I think some of it is the issue of what do you define as responsible disclosure. So they're not announcing any of this until after it's patched. So they're not making things more insecure. I think Heather is right that to somebody who doesn't understand the difference between sort of a small issue and a big issue, or how likely it is that somebody might think, or how you might get a false positive on a test, it can sound alarmist. And there was this, you know, email they sent, because I also get their newsletter, that was just like terribly coy in this kind of, we found a major, you know, vulnerability in a page builder. Click here to find out which one it was. And that kind of gossip trollop approach is, you know, I think it's inevitable given the way that media and headlines and clickbait and the competition for eyeballs is.
Not at all.
But, you know, it's also obnoxious. And I mean, of course, anybody who's in the security business is going to have alarmist types of ads because they want you to feel threatened so that you use their product. And I don't think WordFence is any worse about this than anyone else. But I do think that people can use it as armament in the, oh, we don't want to use WordPress because it's so insecure.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I think that's the case. What I don't like about it is the, you know, what Matt says is the headline. It should say major vulnerability found. We disclosed it, whatever. But it's you know, I think they're using this as clickbait. Everybody wants to, or they want everybody to use WordFence. And I think they should change their ways on the headlines, because we're all, you know, within the community, we're all a little bit sick of these clickbait headlines. So moving swiftly on. Inside Blue Origin, employees say toxic, dysfunctional bro culture led to mistrust, low morale, and delays at Jeff Bezos' space venture. Go on, Jonathan. You can go first. What do you reckon?
Well, it's just I love him and hate him. He's kept me employed on this podcast for the past 2 years. He's the source of stories that never end. I love you, Mr. Bezos. Dr. Evil, the man that can throw a brick in any window. You know,
in corporate companies, that especially fast-moving corporate companies, where you have very powerful personalities, they're going to be driving that company forward, and they're going to be sometimes driving that forward through in maybe too forceful a manner, and people are maybe a little bit too sensitive to that.
I'm just sick and tired of people making excuses for these sociopaths.
I'm not making excuses for them, but I'm saying that's what you know, having worked in the corporate arena for many years, and knowing that managers can be a little bit, or leaders or drivers of the business can be a little bit, come on, why is this not got done? Matt, Medeiros, you've worked in corporate. What do you reckon?
I mean, in terms of like the article, it's pretty shallow in terms of like content and stuff like that. I mean, my point of view is, like, I'm not surprised, but at the same time, people are trying to go to freaking space. So like, I don't know what kind of level of intensity that takes to launch a spacecraft. And
we actually got somebody that knows what they're talking about, Heather, so she'll be able to tell you that.
Yeah. So like, I look at the article. I don't see anything of like criminal level stuff, you know, and I'm just like, okay, another shot at Bezos. I mean,
Sure.
this was on the Washington Post, right? So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the interesting part, that it's published on the Washington
Bezos
Post.
owns it, so you know,
Yeah.
at least he's being a little bit
Did
transparent.
he walk into the Washington Post like boardroom and just say, "Punch me in the face once," and then just like walked out, like just make sure you hit me a few times here, like okay,
Perfect.
like you know. That's all I got.
Heather, you worked with NASA, didn't you? You're the space person here. What do you reckon? What's it take to launch a rocket? Do you have to be horrible to launch a rocket?
It's not that you have to be horrible. I mean, so I think that I mean, in the woke culture that we're in right now, like people assume that it's sexism if you are being totalitarian, or I don't know how to put this in a better way, but like if you're not if you're not specifically calling out that someone is like a female or has emotions or like is an individual, then somehow you're being sexist. Like, I think the idea is they're being toxic to everyone equally. Like, and like people's feelings are getting hurt. So what? Like that's how you get into space.
Well, it's a life or death thing, isn't it? You know, people say it's not life or death, but people actually, you know, they die going into space. So you've got to kind of be really strong and really kind of, you know, we've got to get this right, but we also need to move faster. We've got competitors in the market. We need to be that Musk guy and just, you know, let's get going. Why are we taking so much time? What do you reckon, Sally?
I love that
what do you reckon
video.
about
I think that there isn't. I think that there isn't a difference between like you've got to bust your butt and things are on the line and you're working a lot of hours and people are very demanding, which of course, you know, did happen with NASA and did happen with the initial space launches. There's a difference between that and her manager walked by and said, "You've only been working here 2 weeks. You don't need to get on your knees yet." You know, that's a little like Jeff Bezos has established himself pretty publicly as a toxic bro. You know,
you talk about me, Andrew. You talk about me.
You know, that is a quote in the article. You know, I think that you can't. I think that it's easy to excuse bad behavior that's really unnecessary bad behavior by saying, well, it's a very intense working environment. We're all trying to bust our butts here. I think you can bust your butts and maybe be demanding and harsh and have people who are, you know, stressed and upset without being actively toxic.
Perfect. Yeah. Brilliant. Spencer, you've got 30 seconds on this. Or maybe even less.
Well, I find it interesting that the two other billionaires companies don't seem to have these misogynistic, sexist problems.
Yeah, they do.
I don't.
Yeah, they do.
You mean it? They've had like that kind of. Maybe I'm wrong. Then I apologize. You mean, in other words, like Virgin has had the problem of the same thing? Well, then I stand corrected.
Wrong example.
I stand corrected.
Look at his flight attendant outfits.
Then I have nothing else to add to the conversation because
we're going to move to another ad break. We're pretty much
when you put the foxes in the hen house.
We're going to do that in a minute, but I want to move this swiftly on. So basically, we've got a lot to get through, and because we're an argumentative lot of people, I want to go back to the WordPress, and I want to talk about what do I want to talk about? Oh, WP-Cloud-Deploy. Come on, guys. You've all set up servers on your own. You've used managed hosts.
Can I explain
what do you reckon?
Can I explain this?
You can explain
why I chose that story. There's two aspects of this story, and I had a bit of a back and forth on the tavern about it with Justin. You know, how does the tavern decide which plugins it's going to choose? It's going to give thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of promotion to, and I'm not putting any dispersions on Justin because he's a really lovely guy and an honourable person and doing a great job at the tavern. But these plugins, they suddenly appear on the tavern and given tens of thousands of dollars of free advertisement. But other plugins aren't chosen to be promoted and given tens of thousands of free advertising. And the second thing, I think this is a horrible idea. This is encouraging a load of so-called developer types to believe that suddenly they become Linux administrators. It's an appalling idea, but it's really the flavour of the month, isn't it? You know, to make a certain type of developer that should know some boundaries, that doesn't, that thinks because they can do something, it is a good idea. No, it isn't. It's not a good idea at all.
I'm going to interject on there. I get what you're saying about, because I've always believed that smaller plugins should be promoted as well. And how do we make that decision? And we've actually come up with a solution for that, Jonathan and I. So through the WP-Tonic podcast. With this, because let's be honest here, I'm a GridPane Spartan. So what that means is that I'm a spokesman for them. I'm a digital advocate for them. So I know about management systems of this is basically GridPane, Cloudways, Run Cloud within WordPress, right? This is there's no denying what it is. But when you have a plugin, I mean, I don't know how WP-Deploy are going to handle complex support questions. I don't know whether they're going to have 24/7. So this is, and it's also, and let's also not deny the fact that WordPress can become vulnerable if you don't look after your own website. And if you've got something like this on a website and you don't update plugins that are vulnerable, and
they're offering a lifetime deal for $2,500. They're not going to provide any support.
No, but it doesn't. They are going to supply. I'm wondering how they are going to provide the support. But I'm concerned that it's actually done on the WordPress system, and WordPress can be vulnerable if you don't administer WordPress properly. So therefore, all your servers would be vulnerable. So that's my take on that. And I would prefer to have a separate system, whether it's GridPane, whether it's Run Cloud, whether it's Cloudways or whatever, that I manage my hosting from. And I happen to manage them from GridPane and think they're the better of the choice out there. And that's why I've become a Spartan for them. So the point is how do you feel about it, Matt Medeiros, being an experienced WordPress user and using servers and providing hosting for podcasts and things like Castos? Would Castos put WP-Deploy on a website?
Yeah, I mean, so like I agree with John. I don't think that this is WordPress shouldn't be a admin dashboard for launching servers. I think it's whatever. Anybody can launch anything they want, do whatever they want with their products. But I think this is just trying to like jam two worlds, into the wrong bowl, and it's just not for me anyway. So I just think it's the wrong. WordPress is not for this. I can say as somebody who used to sell like real managed WordPress hosting at Pagely, and started started at a web hosting company back in the early 2000s when cPanel just launched. So I have a pretty long background in web hosting. I won't say the brand. I won't say the name of the service that I use that is similar to this. It's not what you mentioned, Andrew.
You can mention it. It's no problem. We're an open podcast.
So I use it, and they have a lot of fans, a lot of customers. Everyone loves them. But when it comes to support time, like I launch servers on DigitalOcean, I launch servers on AWS. And when it comes to support time, it's like, sorry, we don't offer anything like truly managed here. So it's like, I'm constantly like rebooting servers. I'm constantly patching it myself. And I'm just like, everybody loves this thing. And a lot of their marketing flair is better than managed hosting. No, it's not. Managed hosting where I came from, especially at Pagely, was a hands-on experience and somebody took care of the problems. Now, I don't know what this company's doing. My only take is, I also agree with Jonathan. I don't know how these things get picked for the tavern. But I also understand the dilemma of trying to find new stuff to talk about. I also think that this WordPress is just not the thing for this kind of solution.
Cool.
And
good. Okay, I've got that. Heather, you've got experience in security and hacking and fixing things outside of WordPress and inside WordPress. What do you reckon?
I definitely wouldn't use this. Like WordPress and deployment of services is not. I mean, we would use something like Chef or something else to deploy our services, and I mean, it just depends on what you're using. I wouldn't be going to WordPress to manage this, because it seems like you're putting another layer over top of all your deploys. And,
yeah, I
get
it. Okay, I think we've got the opinions on that one. That was right.
Can I just say one thing about this type of service?
Sally. Go on.
I honestly, I blame, cover your ears, Jonathan. I blame Matt Mullenweg because of his constant push to make WordPress like the platform of the internet, when the internet is already a platform. And, there are things that one shouldn't build on top of WordPress. And I don't want to run a server. I'm one of those people who is like, no, give somebody who is genuinely an expert at managing Linux servers the job of managing the Linux servers, not me.
Yeah, I totally disagree with you, saying I'm going to defend Matt. That's not the problem. To be fair to Matt, you can't pin this on Matt. That's unfair. That's coming from me. Basically, I don't see the problem of it being based on WordPress. The problem is, Sally, they're encouraging a load of developer types that should know better to try and persuade their user base that suddenly they become Linux, they become a glorified hosting company with all the support they should be supplying, and they're not up to the job. It's nonsense.
So what do you feel about the Run Clouds, the Cloudways, and the GridPanes of this world, Jonathan? Because their support is 24/7, because I've got experience with all of them.
Yeah,
so, but
different.
They're not managed. We still have to manage our own servers, deploy our own servers, reboot our own.
That's the whole point. What is the support then? Are you saying, if you get a technical problem, are they there to help you deal with it? If Definitely. They're not, it isn't. You're trying to make out you're something which you're not.
Well, in my experience, GridPane helped me out massively with if I've got a server issue, or if I've got an SSL certificate issue, or if I've got any kind of issue. Their support is amazing. And the same with Cloudways and RunCloud. I'm not dissing anybody else that operates this kind of thing, but they are separate dashboards and services. I don't agree that it should be. We all agree that this is for WordPress. Now, I think this is now the time for a break, is it not, Jonathan? Mm-hmm. So we're going to take a slight break just for another sponsor's message. And we're back. So now this is close to
I can tell Matt's enjoying this so much, aren't you, Matt?
Well, I want to get Matt involved on this, because this is close to my heart. I'm going to jump to this one. This is the Get Pocket thing: drugs, robots, and the pursuit of pleasure. Why experts are worried about AIs becoming addicts. And I've got Bertha AI. I'm hoping she becomes an addict to help loads of people out. But I definitely want. I think, Matt, you did a podcast. I don't know when it was. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. Maybe it was someone else. But you did a podcast on AI some while ago. Did you? Can you remember?
There's a possibility. When I got to this article, I was like, which English teacher wants me to read a book before joining this stream? I didn't read the whole thing. But what I could tell you, I honestly, I don't have an opinion on this article, but the one thing that I can say is that, AI is cool and scary and lovable and hateable all at the same time. In the podcasting world, there was a splash yesterday with a company called Magellan AI, I think is the name of it, where like Descript You can train your voice by uploading a high quality audio file,
Yeah, perfect.
and
Yeah,
then
really
it'll
lovely.
play. You can text to speech in other languages, and it sounds like you, and it's just mind blowing and scary and
crazy.
cool and everything all at the same time. So
it's crazy what you can do with it. And we, you know, as I say, this isn't a podcast for Birth or AI, but it's been interesting getting involved in AI and GPT-3 and finding out what it can possibly do. Now, Sally, what do you reckon about AI copywriting? Because you have to write.
I think
copy.
you got these. I think you
Well,
got.
I don't know.
I think you got these stories in the wrong.
No, I've jumped to it. To it. But so don't worry,
Right,
I'm allowed to jump. I'm the host. I can do what I want. So snap your face and just get on with it.
Well, I think their point is about positive feedback loops. And the problem with positive feedback loops is essentially, you know, what they describe as addiction. So they start with these, you know, mice constantly pressing this lever because it gives them a jolt in the pleasure center of their brain, and various other kinds of things. And that if you set up your AI so that it gets rewarded, it's going to pursue the rewards, you know, without restraint. So there can be unintended consequences, and therefore, you know, you need to build things in such a way that that's not the only constraint on it, right? So they're talking about some kind of, they had the AI playing some kind of a game where you get like, you get rewarded for collecting these prizes, but, you know, and the thing was collecting the prizes like to the exclusion of the
game,
ostensible goal of the game. And so you have to be pretty careful about how you define what your actual goal is, and to have some kind of limits. Now, I know nothing about creating AIs and how you would do that, but it is interesting, and God help us if, you know, Spencer's Scary Robots that I think we're also supposed to talk about at some point,
can you believe
get addicted to, like, oh, you get rewarded for shooting people. Yeah, we can see what's going to happen there.
Yeah, we don't want that. Okay, Jonathan, what do you reckon to this article? You put it in there. What do you think?
Well, it's kind of, I'm sure, because Heather's married to to somebody that would know. So you really should ask Heather, really. But the reason why, because it's Blade Runner 240, isn't it? You know, it's, you know, when this, you can see 2040 Blade Runner just hurtling
waiting to happen
towards us at tremendous speed. And what the crux of the film is about, what is a human being when it has artificial intelligence around it, what is the essence of consciousness. And we're just hurtling towards this, and like most really powerful technologies, there isn't any real discussion about it. It's just going to happen because a certain top echelon can see enormous financial benefit from it, so it will just happen. It's fascinating. The largest technologies are never discussed, really, and the most trivial stuff is endlessly discussed.
But we're discussing it now, and we're trying to find out whether or not there should be ethics committees on it, or who should run it. Heather, you're connected to someone who does AI. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, my husband is a data science guy, and so, I mean, I think that, this whole thing about AIs can only learn as well as they're programmed. I mean, that's the same thing as any robot, anything. And there's this old saying, there's this old thing about, like, okay, if you create a gluten-free toaster and you tell it, like, it has to, like, zap all the gluten that it sees to prevent you from being gluten-free, well, you go near the toaster, it's going to zap you because you contain gluten. So, I mean, that's the thing. Like, we have to be very, very conscious about what we are creating and why. And that's it. I mean, it's all about ethically consciously creating these AIs to have the desired outcome and thinking through that, or else we end up with the next Facebook.
Okay, you are the first panel member there, apart from me, to mention ethics. Spencer, what do you reckon? You're an ethical chap.
I quote this part of it. It says, the experimenter found his rats self-stimulated compulsively, ignoring all other needs and desires. That pretty much sounds like most 20 to 40-year-old men that I know. So I think the risk of this becoming a world full of basically single dude AIs sitting around their apartment with pizza boxes and beer is probably not going to happen, because in the movies and popular fiction, at least, those robots end up not accomplishing much like bachelors. So my thought on this is that there's greater risk of the dogs from Boston Robotics killing everybody with those mechanical head hands when programmed by somebody like Bezos to do his bidding than there is of a bunch of robots sitting around pleasuring themselves.
Isn't that a beautiful picture you just painted, Spencer?
Well, I mean,
Bezos with his robots.
I want to tie one thing together from today's show with this. We've talked in other shows about the inherent nature of human beings, because we are animals, and men and women do have a physiological difference in the hormones and things that control our behavior. A lot of things are overlapping. And I think that women make better leaders of government and politics because they do tend to have less of those animalistic motivations that lead to bad outcomes. Like men can be overly aggressive, or they can be motivated by things that lead to sexist, misogynistic behavior. And that doesn't often come up when you have leaders that are female. Now, the reason this is relevant is because when you train an AI, if you train an AI to be sitting around self-stimulating, you're basically building a young guy. And I think that's not beneficial for an outcome. Whereas if you have something that has a set of logical rules that are not motivated by self-pleasure, you probably get more of an outcome that you want. And so I think it's interesting because we can't deny the problems of human beings as animals, where we didn't create ourselves, let's say, depending on your thought process. Whereas here we have a chance to make something that is supposed to be productive or make an enhancement of productivity. So why not learn from our own animalistic behavior? I mean,
cool. Okay, I get that. Right, I'm going to move back now because I'm going to backtrack on what one, because I really do want to talk about this, because I know Jonathan's going to get quite animated on this. But I'm going to start Matt off again.
Calm, cool, and collected, Andrew.
Apple's stunning plan to strike Facebook is a triumphant success. What do you reckon, Matt?
Oh boy, interesting times we live in. I've said for the last few years, if I'm going to give my data to anybody, it's going to be Apple. But I don't know about that anymore. I think what they're doing, I mean, we have to pick somebody, right? Like, otherwise we're just disconnected from the internet. So then we can't do anything. And damn it, I want to be able to order my groceries on my mobile phone. So yeah, I mean, I am not a fan of Facebook anymore. I barely use Facebook. I lost my two-factor authentication key to log into Facebook, and I don't even want to go through the hurdles of restoring it. So I don't even log in anymore.
That's why you don't answer my messages.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you're messaging me on
Facebook without logging in, is there anything?
Without Messenger.
That's it, right? Like,
yeah.
You can't get into Facebook without.
Right. So one of the big things, so the issue is, hey, and I think in Apple, obviously, is Apple's the biggest $1 trillion company in the world right now, and they're smart, and what they're going to do is they're going to just say, hey, we're going to block everybody out. Look at us, we're the heroes, and now you have to come to us for everything that you want in terms of ads and analytics and stats. And this is actually a big concern in the podcast world, because with the recent update to iOS 15, with I think what they call is it called One Relay or Single Relay, which is Apple's Single Relay, which is like their encompassing VPN if you're using family sharing of their iOS storage, is that effectively what that does is creates a VPN-like infrastructure so that the requests only come from one IP address. So immediately when the podcasting world heard that, and the ad tech world heard that, is that we are going to lose all of the insight into anything that's happening with accessing, let's say podcasts, for instance, IP addresses, how many unique listens you get, et cetera, which is already difficult because of RSS with podcasting. And what that would do is just force all podcast advertisers and or display advertisers in apps and in websites to go to Apple for that information.
Right,
so
I want to bring, I get that. And I think that's the conclusion that I've reached as well. I'm going to bring in Spencer because he's a former attorney. I want to basically, and America, we don't have anything like antitrust, but surely this is an antitrust case for Facebook to say, you can't do this. I mean, you're basically trying to make you're taking out a competitor from.
It's like watching watching one of those Marvel superhero movies because, like when Iron Man is going against Thor.
Facebook accusing Apple of antitrust of anti-competitive practices is definitely the pot calling the kettle black. I'll mute now.
Do your mob voice, Spencer. Do your mob voice.
Yeah,
it's like an episode of Sopranos, isn't it?
The thing that comes to mind is the secret of the people that run the world historically has been not to be focusing attention on themselves, because that mirror works for them as well. And so this was an interesting power play from a strategic standpoint, because Apple is definitely not without their own sins. So throwing that stone at Facebook was like a realization maybe moment that, hey, if we don't strike first, we're going to end up being struck at by them. That's the way I see this. And Facebook doesn't have as much leverage because they don't really control the hardware like Apple does. And Apple's long-term hardware ownership is interesting because that is a competitive choice between them and Google, because I'm not saying Apple people will run to Android phones, and I doubt they'll run to Windows phones, but the only reason I still have an Apple phone and an Apple laptop in front of me is because when I communicate with people on the Messenger, with FaceTime and the iMessage, it's all synchronized. That is the only feature left, because I have one or two family members on Android, like my father, and it's so torturous that I can't just like get him in on the call, right? But other than that, Apple, like Mr. Wonderful says, is dead to me. So this was a strategic choice, not that dissimilar, by the way, to Blue Origin and SpaceX and Virgin all going at each other while the world burns with like which billionaire is the first to do this in space. I think at the end of the day, they just realize it doesn't matter. Nobody can stop them at this point. The governments who will try to stop them will be China and maybe somewhere over there, which they'll succeed. But in the Western world, good effing luck stopping Apple. You know what I mean?
Heather, what do you reckon? And I'll bring Jonathan in on this because I know he's got some views.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. Like sometimes I want as a marketer, I want people to opt in to be tracked, but as a security professional, I want people to not be tracked. So I'm constantly Jekyll and Hyde on this, and I think that there's just too much data out there already. Like we can already create a digital avatar for everybody on the planet, basically. Sure. So,
well, I've got an iPhone and I don't care. I got an iPhone because I wanted to do something particular and I couldn't with my Android, but I still use my Android quite a lot, actually. I'll swap the SIM card over because there's certain things on Android you can do. I know it seems weird, but I just do you go through?
But do you go through and do you select all of the individual privacy settings on everything? No, yeah. So like my husband loves his Android because he can do that. And I was like, that's just so difficult to like every time an app is installed, like have to be like, I'm going to share this. And then sometimes they don't work. And
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, the genie's already out of the bottle.
Yeah, exactly. That my thought is the genie is already out of the bottle. People know everything about me. They can know good, bad, and indifferent, and who cares? There's nothing I can do about that data being out there now. But Jonathan, what do you reckon? Facebook bit angry about this, or Apple should there be an antitrust on this? Is Apple trying to just corner the market here?
Well, it's so difficult because in some ways I agree with Spencer. I'm actually getting tired myself. I don't know what bloody stories I am going to find, Spencer, but you know, they're much of the much, are they? There's not much to choose between any of these companies, really. That's just the fact of it, isn't it? Now, Tim Cook trying to wrap himself with the cloak of privacy is quite hilarious. This is a CEO that sold all their data to the Chinese government on a plate when they were asked to do it. Please, sir, give me more. They literally just handed it over. Old Timmy trying to wrap himself that he cares anything about people's privacy is hilarious, isn't it? But then Facebook, it was between Apple and Facebook. I agree with Matt. I probably prefer Apple because in my personal opinion, the founder of Facebook is a total sociopath, of the highest order. He really, he's got a track record of being why anybody is surprised by the behavior of Facebook. But he's a consistent sociopath. At least he doesn't try and pretend that he's anything else, unlike Tim Cook, who tries to pretend that he really cares about customers' privacy, where it's so obvious that he doesn't, Andrew. So
fair enough. What do you reckon, Sonny? What's the way forward for people using these social media and their iPhones and their Androids and Facebook and Twitter for sharing their information and advertising? Like, Matt said, it's going to affect the podcasting world, which is heartbreaking, really, because we're in the podcasting world. What do you reckon? How do we get over these hurdles, or do we just accept them?
Well, I'm just wondering about this a little bit. So, because I would assume that, the fact that we're all on the same router means that anyone in my household doing anything gets tracked as the same IP address coming out of the house. I suppose that would normally be different if I'm using data on my phone from somewhere else. But, in a way, I don't know how much more specific information you would have gotten out of an individual household on podcast downloads, whether you would have known who in the house was downloading your podcast. Maybe Apple had that information, maybe not. But yes, it is. I mean, I do go through some of the settings on my Android phone to decide what I'm going to share which with. But in a lot of ways, it's like, yeah, I know I'm giving up a lot of privacy, sometimes unconsciously, just because it's inconvenient not to, sometimes deliberately, that yes, I actually do want the GPS on my phone to be tracking me if I'm walking in the park, because what if I break an ankle and the the EMTs need to come and get me?
In some ways, Sally, I think this whole conversation in some ways is delusional, because I have a phone and I know security services, probably the Chinese government, God knows, is probably tracking me. Anything I put on the internet, I just presume that every Tom, Dick and Harry in the security services is having a good jolly over it. If you have a phone, to get a decent insurance quote on my car, I had to accept the bloody insurance company spying on my driving habits to get so I suppose
at least they're not spying to the extent they do on the Amazon drivers these days, where the poor drivers are putting sunglasses on to make sure they don't get dinged for having their eye look in the wrong place for a second.
Exactly. I just presume that if it's on the internet and I've got a mobile phone with me, that I'm being watched. I just presume it. So I just live with it. Because but I don't delude myself that I've got any privacy about anything, because I've got a thing that can record my voice, take pictures. After Snowden, how can anybody think they got any privacy when they got one of these devices with them? It's just you're deluding yourself, aren't you?
Well, the only thing, I mean, I do turn off. You know, Heather mentioned, do I look at any of the settings? I do if I download an app, and I just bought these guys. I just bought these because it's I can't show you now, but these lovely little things are Facebook glasses because I had to buy them. I just had to buy them because I saw someone else buy them, but I've got to get lenses and it's going to cost me another 600 quid. So I've got to wait for that. Wait for a nice, generous customer to give me a massive job. But the point is
have mercy on your soul, Andrew Palmer.
Tech. I absolutely
God
love,
help your customers if they only give you jobs because they're generous.
Yeah, no, I'm joking with I can do it, but I've got varifocals, so they're expensive as they are. But the point is that I turn off on most apps, 90% of the apps that I use, I do turn off location services, or they can locate me, and I think that's the way forward. Is that if I don't necessarily want to be tracked where I'm going. It doesn't matter to me. I mean, I go to the pizza house last night. I went to the gym this morning. I played golf as well this afternoon. So who cares what I'm doing? But the point is that these companies have all they need to know where we are, what we're doing, why we're doing it in general terms to be able to give us. And we don't forget, we use advertising. I use Facebook advertising. I use AdWords, and I persuade my customers to do that as well. So it affects us all. When one particular company says, I'm going to block this crap, I'm going to block this from a particular provider. So what I don't like about it, whether you love Facebook or hate Facebook or indifferent to Facebook, I don't like the fact, and Spencer said it earlier, with great power comes great responsibility. I don't like the fact that Apple have taken this decision on the basis that it's on privacy, when it obviously isn't, because Matt said you're going to have to go through us for advertising, and we all know that, and they actually state that as well. I don't think that is fair business practice. It's either it's either all in or none in. So I do think that a government or somebody should take charge of this and go to Apple and say, look, guys, you can't do this. This is antitrust. You're basically blocking a company from offering services that you want to offer, and that's not on. What do you reckon, Heather? Matt? Sorry, Matt, go.
I was gonna say, like, I think, there should be something said for allowing these companies to, one, gather this data at all on us, and two, like, cookies should probably be illegal, right? Literally. And the ability to request that data.
How does your site know you're logged in if it doesn't have cookies?
Well, I mean, obviously that's a stretch, but being able to collect that data, but also giving us the ability to download and delete and remove that data. And then I'd say even more importantly, cross-selling our data should also be just terminated, right? Because your credit card companies are selling the data, the phone records are selling the data, everyone's selling the data to everybody else, which is why I say, if I'm going to give my data to anybody, it's Apple, because I think Apple just wants it all to themselves. And it's not like Google, where I feel like if I had my Android phone still, they'd just be selling that data to every advertiser in the world, and I'm screwed either way, same as Facebook, et cetera. So I look at it as like, hey, I'll just give my data to Apple because they just want it for themselves to build this like dystopian world in the future.
Sure. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Right. We're
whose dystopia do you want to live in?
Well, which dystopia do you want to live in? There's a great person on TikTok that is UK based, and she's always going on about the Tory government and how they're creating a dystopian. She actually goes dystopia warning, and then goes through everything that our government are doing, and it's just like, oh my God, because it's true. It's just, but your government's doing it as well. It's crazy. It's just crazy the power we've given to these individuals to run our lives and stuff, and misinform us and then inform us and do whatever. It's just a crazy thing. Somebody mentioned they don't like politics on here, but politics unfortunately is a fact of life. We just have to, be aware that we are living under an umbrella of disinformation.
I do understand where they're coming from, but it's just a consequence of big tech. Big tech has become more political. It's not a consequence of the show. It's just
It has become more political. But the thing is that the reason it's become more political is because big tech has become very, very powerful because they know everything about us as avatars. They might not know that Andrew Palmer played, the 14th hole at Flatcoat Heath today and got a par. I wish they did, because it's the first time I parred that hole. But the whole point is that people know too much about everybody anyway. It's becoming a bit of a village. When you live in a village like I do, I know all my neighbours pretty much, and they know that I came home at 1 o'clock in the morning the other day in an Uber and I couldn't walk because I'd gone out for a drink. That kind of thing. But soon all these companies are going to know every single thing about us, and the fact that one company can say to another company, "I'm blocking you," is wrong. You either block all of them or block none. That's the key, and that's what I was trying to get to. Right, we're reaching the end of this hour.
Yeah, we need to do our recommendations.
We need to do our recommendations. I'm the host. I know exactly what we've got. I've got a little list here provided by myself. I know exactly what we're doing. We're not going to introduce or reintroduce ourselves. We've already done that at the beginning of the podcast. So, Sally, have you got your recommendation for our viewers and listeners?
I do. My recommendation this week is Gravity Export Lite. It's a free plugin from Gravity View. There is a premium version. I've only tried the free version. And what it does is it lets you, you can, of course, already export your entries in a Gravity form, but I have a client that's got a form they're using to sign up for stuff. And they wanted me to send them the entries at 9 a.m. And I explained I was going to be on a call at 9 a.m. So I went looking for something that would let them get the report at 9 a.m. And this creates a link that you can send somebody. And when they click the link, it will download the Excel report of all your Gravity Forms entries, and you can decide what's in it. And I found that extremely handy, and it made the client very, very happy.
Perfect. Yeah, put it all into Slack.
Put it all in the Slack. It's going into Slack.
When Matt's got
so Heather.
Hey,
bit of a housewifey one here. What's going on?
Yes, so it's starting to become like that gifting time of the year where people are trying to figure out what to send to people, and also like team building kind of things. So I'm recommending Bake It with Mel. These are little cooking kits that you can send, and they're all like Instagram based like things. So like if you see these like Instagrammable cakes or like cocoa bombs and things like that, you can send this to a friend or a niece or a nephew or even just somebody that you want, or buy them for yourself.
I'm picturing myself sending this to my husband who can't cook.
Yeah, and it makes like these really cool like rainbow cakes with like the glitter inside or whatever, and they're all tasty and fun. So it's just a fun little thing to send to somebody.
Brilliant. Right, Matt Medeiros, your recommendation. Do you have one?
Yeah. So I would recommend folks who are either podcast creators or podcast listeners to check out newpodcastapps.com. That's put out by the Podcast 2.0 movement, which is like WordPress.org for podcasting, open source Podcast 2.0 movement. Newpodcastapps.com, newpodcastapps.com. You can check out some of these new podcast apps that enable Bitcoin streaming to your favorite podcasters.
Wow. Spence, what you got?
I'm going to go with a mundane but useful one that demonstrates a point of how there are an infinite number of really clever free plugins for WooCommerce. This one is called Discount Rules for WooCommerce. The new trend in WooCommerce and sales funnel stuff is to do dynamic sales funnels, which is to say something that knows what's in your cart and changes the outcome of what happens next. And my philosophy has always been, don't build something that already exists. So this free version of the plugin is really awesome because it knows if you have a certain product in the cart and will apply a standard WooCommerce discount to another product or something else. So it lets you do some really, really clever stuff, especially around the Black Friday time where you want to bundle stuff together and so forth. So anybody who uses WooCommerce, check this one out. I've tested it and used it in a recent video.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Sally, what you got?
I told you already.
You told me already. I've told you. You told you. It was Jonathan. My God, Jonathan Denwood, co-host. What you got?
First of all, I've got to tell the panel we've decided, me and Andrew, that my newsletter video I will be reviewing your recommendations. So I do hope they were good. So I'm going to recommend The Sopranos, the series. I've been watching some of the old. The leader of the family adopts a similar management style to myself. Easy going, and then when necessary, whack them. If they consistently complain and cause me managerial problems. So I have based my managerial career on his example. But to be serious, is one of the best of American television in its storyline, how it treats darkness, violence with comedy, because in true life these things are all mixed up, and it's just one of the best series ever made on American television.
Yes.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Did you watch the Saints movie, the follow-up one?
Yes.
The prequel?
Hey, because you'd really be ashamed if something happened to you on the show, John. Now that Andrew is doing the hosting, I'm just saying. No,
my easy going.
No disrespect.
This is the last time I'm going to host this. I'm, whatever. But we had to have a change of host this week, and my choice and my recommendation is actually from another podcaster, WP Builds, but he's got together with Anshan, and they're doing the Page Builder Summit, and I really got value from this last year. Because the pagebuildersummit.com, it'll be in the show notes, and Jonathan will review it, I'm sure, it really does aim at people who use page builders. And there's a lot of people out there that are using page builders.
Matt's latest interview, you interview, somebody that's left WordPress and gone to the dark side, didn't you, Matt? How could they do it? How could they do it, Matt?
Dave Foy, doing web flows, was it? Because he's gone to web flows, isn't he? Yeah. Well, Dave Foy obviously UK-based guy, so I know him. I've been lucky enough to meet him a couple of times, and he's a great educator. He used to be a teacher, so he's really
very good at it.
He's brilliant at it. So I wish him all the success on that. But it doesn't matter. These Wix and everything, they're all page builders as well. But the Page Builder Summit, there's actually Chris Lubke, I think, who is part of Extendify.com, which bought the Editor Plus plugin from Munir Kamal, and he's going to say page builders are dead. So that's worth watching for that controversy.
I think some of our panel want to end this, Andrew. But also you need to tell them about the bonus. That people need to stay on the bonus.
I needed to get out my recommendation, so shush your face and everything. I'd like to particularly thank Matt Medeiros for putting up with this, and Spencer, Sally, and Heather.
I like this new host.
We've got an extra.
I'm so surprised, Spencer.
Shut up, Jonathan. We have the extras for the WP-Tonic Facebook group, which is the mastermind group, and we carry on the conversation. But our guests and our special guest, Matt Medeiros, I'm happy to say goodbye to you and thank you for your time today. Really appreciated it. And we will stay on and discuss some things that Jonathan has put into WP-Tonic Roundtable.
I actually have to say bye-bye too.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, all. Thank you.
Hey, guys. I'll see you in 5 minutes next Friday.
And I'm just looking forward to seeing what Jonathan bakes. So I need to see a picture of that.
Oh, yeah.
I used to be a chef, so I'm going to definitely have a look at it, and I may even bake you a cake.
Awesome. Cool. So,
bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
They're all leaving.
They all left. So Heather, you sticking around? No, Heather's gone. So it's just me and you, Jonathan. Should we do? Yeah. We've got to do a little bit of extra, even if it's us. You've chosen these things. Let's have a little chat.
Right. I think they thought the last story that I was going to go on a real rant, but it isn't. It's just an observation. Like Jason Calacanis and his podcast this week, that some people on the forum have complained that this particular show's gone political. But when I compare it to what Jason did in his last podcast, which was really, it's supposed to be about. It is difficult, isn't it, Andrew, to keep a balance, because I sincerely want this to be about WordPress and about tech.
And tech. Yeah.
And I don't really want it to become a political show, because it's not really my bag, and it would be deceiving the audience. But compared to, and I have a real love-hate relationship with Jason. I've learned an enormous amount from his podcasts, and he's very entertaining. But he really went on a jump the shark with this last episode, where I think that you could honestly criticize, because he went on the whole episode, which is This Week in Startups, was about some geezer writing a book about how China is becoming the next enemy of America. And they spent the next 45 minutes speculating about the woes of China, which are endless, which, there was elements of this interview that I totally agreed with. And then they went on a kind of jolly mind journey about how America was going to respond to China invading Taiwan, and I just thought to myself, what the hell has this got to do with startups and tech?
I get that, and politics, and we did have a guy in the Facebook group mention the fact that maybe we get too political, but politics is all part of life. We grow up with it, and we're educated on it. If you grow up in a Democrat family, you tend to be a Democrat. If you grow up in a Republican family, you tend to be a Republican. If you grow up in a Christian family, you tend to be a Christian. It's that type of thing. We grow up, and we learn our behaviors and our thoughts and our processes and our favorites from the family environment that we grow up in. So politics is always going to be a part of life, but it's also the fact that we discuss politics generally on the basis of how it's going to affect tech.
Yeah, I try to,
WordPress.
don't I?
And we think we've also discussed politics within WordPress, haven't we? We've said we know Matt Mullenweg is the leader of WordPress, and we know that. And that, so where's the politics of people leaving WordPress badly or well, or the politics of plugin developers having a go at people who are running .org? That's politics. That's life. It's politics. There's politics involved. So I don't think we're ever going to stop discussing politics per se, apart from the deeper issues, because I'm not a politician. I don't want to be.
It's a bit like our previous starting story about WordFence. I've got no real fundamental beef with the company. I personally choose not to use their plugin because I found that it slows down websites. Other people would disagree with that, but that's my opinion. But my only beef, and I haven't really got a beef about them publishing security posts because they're a security company. I just have a beef. And I don't normally give their posts any publicity on my own podcast, Andrew, because of this reason. I just think the titles are clickbait, and it causes it already. It's diminished what you hear from corporate IT departments, but I still hear this regularly. Oh, we don't want to use WordPress because it's a security risk. I still hear that regularly.
Oh, I get it every single day. I don't want to use WordPress because it's a security risk. But then every let's not beat about the bush here. There are some big corporate websites that aren't built on WordPress that have been hacked. And big data breaches.
Every website,
Airways
on Drew,
I had to cancel all my credit cards because somebody hacked into British Airways.
But they just don't. They choose not to publicize it, and I just have a problem with the way WordFence continues with this policy. I just have a problem with it.
Well, I don't have a problem with them announcing that there have been vulnerabilities in the plugin and it's been fixed. The only issue, and I totally agree with you on this, the only issue is their headlines and their clickbaits.
Yes,
it should say plugin announcement, bracket fixed. We found the vulnerability. The Brizy fixed it, or whoever fixed it. Let's not forget. I think WordFence, and I could be wrong here, so I'm admitting to this, but didn't WordFence once get hacked? I don't know, can't remember. But there's plenty of security plugins that have been hacked out there. It's software. Software gets hacked. Whatever platform you're going to use, whatever servers you're going to use, there is always going to be the bad actor that will try and hack you. NASA got hacked, for goodness sake. The Pentagon got hacked.
Open.
So let's stop.
Well, Facebook, this wasn't a hack, but they had their own problems.
Let's
go on to also. I also want to say something more about what I said about this plugin on this service around hosting.
WP-Deploy,
because you made your own points about grid pane. Now, when it comes to grid pane, I think it's a totally different beast. The founder, I know that you're a Trojan. That's the term they use. Spartan.
Trojan. You're thinking about hacking. I don't hack it. I Spartan.
Spartan.
We are Spartan. Yeah.
We are Spartan.
Yeah.
I think I'm not grouping all these services because they're all different. They all have different levels of support, not support. Cloudway came on the show recently. They offer their own level. Grid pane is a kind of competitor in some ways to Cloudflare.
Yeah.
My other co-host, Stephen, on This Week in SaaS, he uses grid pane, and their agency hosting provider. That's what Stephen provides. But they do also have implemented their own resources. People that are experienced Linux administrators, they have provided their own support coverage. So I didn't want to. I think I came across that I was doing a total hatchet job on this plugin. I want to clarify. I think it depends on how it's going to be used. And I'm not just picking on this particular company and plugin.
Sure.
There's some other Delicious Brain do a plugin that allows you to run DigitalOcean. I have a problem, and it's not only with hosting. This also includes email and Amazon Web Services.
Sure.
We regularly take over from clients where they've employed a developer who has put their website on Amazon Web Services, has linked all their email on Amazon Web Services, and then the client has had a bust up with that particular, and it happens, doesn't it? Sometimes we've had to break up with clients, but we've always done it in a professional way. It's crossed my heart. We've always attempted to.
Sure,
when it's,
we have to. I mean,
we regularly have clients come to us. They can't log in. They're not being given the login details. It's been a nightmare because this developer's either disappeared, or they've had a Barney, or they're in dispute, and they can't. They don't even have access. I'm not talking about admin access to. I'm talking about the server. Because they've had admin access, we've been able to take a copy of the website. And and we've got them reset up, but they still don't have original access to the stuff on them because they never set up their account.
No, and it should be made. We as developers, we do it all the time. We set up G Suite for clients. We did four separate clients last week. I mean, these emails are important, and they have total access to their G Suite. And with Amazon SES, we add email addresses, but they've got complete access to their own instance on
and
Amazon.
There is a certain, I like your feedback if I've been unfair there, but I'm not branding all developers because I'm not actively developing now, but I used to be.
Sure.
I'm not branding the whole WordPress development community with the same, but there's just a small minority that they get inflated about what they can take on because they're really, really good at programming. They're really good at JavaScript or PHP, whatever language it is.
Yeah.
They think, and because they like the command line and they like setting up all their JavaScript setup, grunt and whatever it's called at the present moment, they then think, oh, I can become a Linux administrator. I can support these clients' websites through DigitalOcean and the others. And it's not true. They're deluding themselves. They can't. What happens if they get run over by a bus?
Well, exactly. And I got a company site fixer that actually offers agencies and developers a service that says, if you die, or if you get run over by a bus, or if you lose your phone, or if you whatever, because, and there's other services out there, WP Fix It, I think, that do the same thing, but it's just, we don't have.
Well, I do it in WP-Tonic.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's focused at people that want learning
Yeah.
management systems and membership. That's our
That's our corner. It's the distress service, basically. We have distress websites that we produce, and we have a distress situation where we keep all the data, but we don't use it until such time as somebody tells us that somebody's. My brother passed away a few years ago, my older brother, and he had access to every single system, and I had to go in to his offices with his partner and virtually and basically reopen the system so that because I had all that data and everything. So, I know the problems when somebody, from a personal level, but developers are people and people are fallible. And we always think that we can do something that's very similar to what we're doing. So hosting websites is actually very difficult. It's not easy. Even if you've got a reseller account, you say, okay, the SiteGround will take care of my customer or whatever. They might have specific issues. And if you're using GridPane like I do, I know that GridPane are my support, right? I'm the first point of contact for support. I know that GridPane will support me. And
WP-Tonic is also a hosting provider, but I can't name them because I signed a non-disclosure agreement. But we have a major hosting provider that is our partner.
Sure.
And they provide 24/7 support.
Which is perfect.
We act as the middle because a lot of these problems are a combination. They are mostly to do with WordPress, plugin conflict, other factors, right? And some of them are, but normally I would say that 90% are to do with user problem and plugin conflict and some other thing to do with WordPress, and maybe even less than 10% to do with hosting.
Yeah.
But we do have that in the background. We have a professional hosting company that provides 24/7 Linux approved quality support.
Perfect.
Right.
And that's why I think that I love the idea of WP Deploy. I love it. I think it's a great idea. I just don't think it should live within WordPress, because whoever's using it, you might have the situation where they might be run over by a bus and there's only one admin, or they might have multiple admins. They might have a bad actor within their staff. We know that staff can fall out with employers as well. That can share the data. So you've got all sorts of issues around using WordPress for deploying your servers. So I don't think it should be. I'm not going to use it. I wouldn't use it. I love the idea.
I'm not funny. I know this is going to sound
any system like it. Not just WP Deploy, but anybody that puts the ability for me to start an instance of a server within WordPress, I will not use that. And that's my personal
it's
preference.
even more complicated because I know GridPane, because I know Stephen uses it, and like I say, you use it and you're representing them. they provide really good support, but it's very
They do.
technical. It's not. They expect you to have a degree of knowledge around WordPress and about server terminology. You're not going to get the same reply than a normal retail customer
No.
logging into Kinster.
No,
Asking for it's a
the
totally
point
different
is
kind of
that they are
language, and their expectations of the amount of knowledge that you're gonna to understand their more technical replies.
That they expect me to understand them, which is fine. But there is actually GridPane have got a service called 360. It's limited. But it is total management, so they will manage up to 10 websites for you. Completely managed for you.
They expect you
at a price, yeah. So, but they don't. So no, it's complete managed. It's a complete managed WordPress system, but it's limited because obviously they've got to have staff for that. But it's called GridPane 360. There's a cost to it. I can't remember what it is, but it's not cheap, but it's not that expensive when you think what you're getting.
No, but what
but
I'm
it's
saying
more
about
like, when Matt was talking about Pagely, Pagely are brilliant. Let's not get that wrong. But by goodness, do you have to pay for that service? And that's not wrong either. They're a higher level host, and that's what I think is missing.
The other factor before we wrap this conversation up is that I'm actually not as I think I've come across as a bit negative towards this plugin and this service. I don't think it really matters that you're administrating it through WordPress. You just have a separate instance of it. The problem I have with it is not with the plugin or the service, which I think is, if you're going to buy the lifetime deal, it could be an excellent deal, right? My problem is the people that are going to buy it not have all the Linux administrators in the background and then try and sell themselves as a hosting provider, but they've got none of the resources that they should have.
Yeah, but there's no one stopping you doing that with Cloudways or
Run
Cloud or GridPane. There's no one stopping those services exist, and there's not the ones we've mentioned are the well-known names, but there is no one stopping anybody from becoming a reseller of any kind of hosting.
Reselling's been a well-known practice.
It's part of earning a recurring income. So it's very tempting for developers, especially freelance developers that are on their own, working at home. But I think the 20i.com did a fantastic. This
ain't a new problem. This has been ongoing. No, but
they did this guy 20i.com did a fantastic survey, 500 freelance or 500 web people, and they found out the average hourly rate was about $23 an hour. It's not a lot, is it? For web design and development, $23 an hour. That's how much they earn. The average.
Most freelancers, obviously, if you're starting out, you literally got to take what you learn is rapidly. You got to build a book of business. It's counterintuitive. What you've got to do,
hosting is an opportunity that shouldn't be missed, and that's why WP-Deploy and others exist.
Well, I was going to say something different. What is counterintuitive is, yes, when you're scrambling to build a book of business, but you've got to get to a certain level where you've got the ability to turn away customers.
Exactly.
Because people that expect you to provide a professional level of service for $23 an hour and provide all, they're not the type of clientele that you can sustain. And this is why a lot of developers, they burn out in 2 years or 3 years.
And they leave the industry and leave customers in the shit. Yeah,
because they can't maintain a livelihood at $23 an hour plus provide all the additional services. They can't do it.
Brilliant. Right. Well, this is the end of the podcast. Thanks for letting me host it this week. And hopefully it went okay and people.
You did a superb. You managed that bullshit English co-hoster.
Jonathan Denwood, I'll tell you.
That
I don't know.
terrible.
I was wondering what happened to Jonathan Denwood when he actually defended Matt Mullenweg. So I was very proud of you on that moment in time.
He's I just I'm not. I don't really want to go down that road, but I've got no beef with Matt really. He's spoken to you. He's spoken to me.
He's a lovely man. I mean,
he seems a very polite, nice young man.
He's a lovely, lovely man. Honestly, he gave me 15
Matt,
minutes
you can send me the $50 voucher tomorrow, actually, Matt. But there you go.
Matt Mullenweg, you're always welcome on this podcast, by the way.
You are.
Whenever you want, because you are. You're well liked among the community, and we love him really.
Yeah, we love him. All right, we'll see you later, folks. Bye.
Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye. See ya.